When war reaches the doorstep, survival becomes an act of raw ingenuity. During the great sieges of the 20th century, Stalingrad, Leningrad, Warsaw, and, countless smaller towns across Europe and Asia, ordinary civilians faced artillery, air raids, starvation, and bitter cold. With no army to protect them and no bunkers provided, they turned to the earth itself. They dug. What began as shallow foxholes for protection from shrapnel evolved into underground shelters so cleverly designed that some sustained entire families for months. Today, these shelters stand as silent monuments to the endurance and resourcefulness of ordinary people under extraordinary pressure. The ground became a fortress when the skies turned deadly. When bombs fell daily and shells tore through streets, civilians had nowhere safe to run. The upper floors of buildings became death traps. Basements flooded or collapsed under bombardment. The only place left was below the ground. Civilians discovered that a few meters of soil could absorb the shock and heat of explosions better than any improvised barricade above. Digging began with basic survival pits, holes about 1.5 meters deep, covered with planks or doors, and topped with soil. But as the days turned into months, people began expanding them. Families joined efforts, connecting pits through small tunnels and reinforcing walls with bricks, logs, or even old furniture. In besieged cities like Leningrad, some of these shelters were dug directly under courtyards, using frozen earth mixed with rubble and ash as insulation. The key to their survival wasn't fancy materials, it was geometry and density. The dome or arch ceiling, borrowed from older mining techniques, distributed the pressure evenly. A rectangular hole with a flat roof could collapse under shock waves, but a curved ceiling stood firm, even after weeks of shelling. A successful shelter had to solve 3 problems: air, water, and heat. Without air, people suffocated. Without drainage, the pit filled with groundwater. Without smoke control, fires used for warmth or cooking turned lethal. Civilians learned to build dual vents, one for drawing in fresh air and one for letting out smoke and carbon dioxide. Often they used scavenged metal pipes, stove parts, or even sections of drain gutters. In Stalingrad, families discovered that an air vent, angled at 45 degrees and raised slightly above ground, prevented debris from clogging it during bombardment. For drainage, trenches lined with gravel or broken tiles carried groundwater away from the shelter floor. In some cases, women poured buckets of sand over the base layer, a crude but effective way to absorb seepage and reduce mud build-up. The ratio was often 1 bucket of gravel for every 2 buckets of sand, packed tightly to prevent collapse. As for warmth, small smokebox stoves became essential. Built from old oil cans or broken boilers, they used just a handful of wood chips or coal dust pressed with clay. The exhaust pipe exited through a vent at ground level and was masked with a cloth or wet mud to hide the glow. During air raids, the faintest spark could attract attention, so every detail mattered. Civilians quickly realized that surviving a siege was about endurance, not just protection. Food had to be stored properly to prevent spoilage in damp underground conditions. The earth itself acted as a natural refrigerator, maintaining temperatures between 8 and 12 degrees Celsius, but it also brought moisture that spoiled flour, grains and potatoes. The solution was a layered storage method. Baskets were lined with straw, then wrapped in cloth, dipped in salt water and dried. The salt inhibited mold and bacterial growth. People rationed food using strict ratios, often as little as 200 grams of bread per adult per day in Leningrad, and kept the supplies nearest to the floor, where temperatures were most stable. Lighting was, well, really minimal. Candles were pretty rare and honestly dangerous, so most civilians relied on oil lamps fueled by rendered animal fat or whatever leftover kerosene they could scrounge. Some folks even got creative, mixing flour paste with salt and grease to make these slow-burning wicks that could last through the night. Just a few drops of grease could give you an hour of dim light, barely enough to write a letter or check on your children. The most successful shelters, weren't solitary at all. They were collective efforts. Groups of 10 or 15 people would combine their strength, resources and know-how to dig deeper and build smarter. Older men who'd spent years in mines or construction took charge of the design, while women handled the insulation and food preparation. Even the children pitched in, gathering soil for reinforcement, filling sacks and packing them around the weak walls. In Warsaw, groups came up with this really effective ratio. For every metre of tunnel, 2 people would dig, 2 would haul soil, and 1 would reinforce the passage. This sort of rotation kept exhaustion at bay and really sped up the work. In just 2 days, they could dig and reinforce a chamber big enough for a family of 4. Even under bombardment, these communities developed silent routines. People cooked at dawn or dusk when smoke was less visible. Waste was buried in side trenches, sprinkled with ash or lime to prevent disease. Those with small tools repurposed scraps from bombed buildings, nails, tin, wooden beams, to strengthen their shelters. Every object became a survival tool. Though these shelters were born from desperation, they revealed principles of resilience that, remain relevant today. Modern preppers and off-grid builders often rediscover the same truths civilians learned by necessity. Earth, absorbs shock and temperature swings better than any synthetic insulation. Proper ventilation prevents both suffocation and fire risk. And community cooperation, honestly, multiplies survival chances far beyond what individuals can achieve alone. Some surviving wartime shelters still stand in Eastern Europe. Small chambers carved from frozen soil, lined with brick or ash wood, and sealed with care. Archaeologists find traces of layered food baskets, soot from makeshift lamps, and even preserved journals. These were not just hiding places. They were underground homes, built under siege, but sustained by ingenuity. If one were to recreate such a structure today for educational or survival purposes, the dimensions would remain practical: 2 meters deep, 3 meters long, and about 1.5 meters wide, enough for 4 people. The roof should be reinforced with planks and a 20 to 25 centimeter layer of compacted soil. 2 ventilation holes, one near the floor and one near the ceiling, maintain airflow. Even in a modern context, this design provides safety from both weather and external threats. The hidden shelters dug by civilians during the sieges of World War II represent one of humanity's most remarkable displays of endurance. These weren't soldiers or engineers. They were parents, labourers and children who refused to give up. With little more than shovels, courage and cooperation, they turned the very soil beneath their feet into sanctuaries of survival. Understanding how they built, maintained and lived in these shelters gives us more than just historical insight. It offers a blueprint for resilience. Whether you're studying wartime ingenuity or modern survival strategies, the lesson remains the same. Human determination, when combined with practical skill, can turn even the harshest conditions into a livable reality. If you found this guide valuable, don't forget to subscribe to Echoes of Valor and share this video with others who appreciate the hidden engineering and human courage behind history's untold survival stories.